lesson on line graphs, bar graphs, and circle graphs. We're going to look at this idea of multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner, a psychologist at the University of Harvard, developed this idea that each person has different types of intelligences or different ways in which they're smart. There's a list and picture of them that shows them here and describes the different ways that you and I can be gifted, ways in which God has gifted us to show our intelligence. School is obviously going to allow us to show some of these things and enhance some of these things through our learning, but there's ways in which, as your teacher, I want to know how you fit into the world and how your intelligence can show, and how that might actually be helpful if you learn that about yourself when it comes to doing each and every part of your schoolwork. So today, we're going to take a multiple intelligence survey or multiple intelligence inventory. What I'd like you to do is read through these instructions with me and then complete the paper. I'm going to show you my version of completing this and then give you a chance to work on it yourself so that, one, we can learn about this aspect in science in which we actually turn some data into a bar graph, and two, you can learn a little bit about yourself in this process. Part 1 says, complete each section by placing a 1 next to each statement you feel accurately describes you. If you do not identify with the statement, leave the space provided blank. Then total the column in each section. So you would read each of these statements, the first one, second one, third one, and if it applies to you, put a 1, put a 1, put a 1, and you add all these up to give your total right over here in this category. There's section 1, 2, 3, 4 on the first page, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on the second page. Okay? Go down here and take a look at Mr. Shane's version of this copy, in which I read through each section and said that these things applied to me. They described me. So when I marked 1 in each of those sections and then counted them, I was able to write that total number down in this portion. For example, let's look at section 4. I enjoy discussing questions about life. Religion is important to me. My faith is important to me. I enjoy viewing art masterpieces. I put all these things down. If they don't apply to you, leave it completely blank. That's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If it does apply to you, you put a 1. And once you count your 1s, you put that total right over here. I completed the first 4 sections and continued on to section 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. After completing the survey, I now have data. I have those tally marks changed into what would be a frequency for then understanding what this actually means for the intelligences that I have. Now notice that each of these sections is not labeled with one of those examples that I showed you. Those intelligences are listed here. Musical intelligence, bodily kinesthetic, means your ability to be coordinated and athletic. Interpersonal means that you're people smart, you like to be a conversationalist, talk a lot, maybe you've got a lot of friends. Verbal linguistic is somebody who's word smart, good with reading and writing. Logic smart or logical mathematical, you're good with the reasoning process and with numbers. A naturalist intelligence is somebody who's nature smart or enjoys just simply being in the outdoors or the aspect of ecology, biology, nature. Intrapersonal means that you are more to yourself and you may have an ability to actually look at yourself and understand yourself more. Visual spatial intelligence is picture smart. You're able to kind of see how things are put together or see visuals. And music intelligence is that music smart, either by listening or creating music yourself. Now, none of those are listed on the survey for a particular reason, because I don't want you to see those examples and say, yep, that's me, and then you fill out every single one of these. I want you to honestly answer each of these aspects and then give your total in that section. The last page in your packet actually has the definition for what those intelligences are, and they fall into these 3 different categories, of one being analytical, introspective, and interactive. So you'll be able to learn a little bit more at the end of the survey which one you fall into based on which one was the highest, and then you can go back, read that definition, and see, yep, that makes a lot of sense to me, or oh, I didn't know this about myself, or maybe it's something that you don't necessarily agree with just based on the questions that are in the survey. That's okay too. Part 2, after you filled out all of those sections, tallied the ones, and then added the total here, you're going to transfer that data to this portion. Now carry forward your total number from each section, and then you're going to multiply by 10. So in section 1, let's take a look at what Mr. Shane got. Mr. Shane got a 7. That means in this portion here, I would write 7 multiplied by 10. 7 times 10 is 70. In section 2, I would write down my total. And if I look at the sheet that Mr. Shane completed, I wrote down my numbers in each of these. I got a 7, a 5, a 6, a 7, a 5, a 7, a 4, a 7, a 5, and I multiplied by 10, basically adding a 0 to that entire column, and then created what would be my multiplied score here. Part 3, we're going to take that data from our tally into our frequency and turn it into the bar graph. Now that you have these numbers multiplied by 10, we're going to put those into each of these sections. And now you can see where section 1, what it's actually talking about in terms of that type of strength or that type of intelligence. Now you're probably saying, well, look, Mr. Shane, your lowest intelligence is in the verbal section. Does that mean that I'm not smart in something like this? Or if my one intelligence is way up here while I'm really gifted here and my one intelligence is down here? This means that you have all of these intelligences. It might mean that you need to work on developing some, or you are just have a natural preference for some things over others. Okay? It does not mean that you don't have or that you do have. These are intelligences that everybody has. They show up in different ways and they show up for different reasons based on what people do with their time and what they do with their intelligences. By the time you're done, you'll take this multiplied score, all of these numbers from section 1, take this number, plug it in here, and then create the bar. Notice how I've separated and gone up to that total amount, so I would fill this in. That's 70, this one was 50, this one was 60, 70, and those should match my multiplied score here. That's part 3. Then lastly, I'd like you to take a look at this little section down here that is kind of the review or the summary section. What were your top 3? That would be the highest 3. I actually had 4 that tied. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I wrote those down. What were your bottom 3? And I had 3 of those that tied. 1, 2, 3, 4. I had 4 that I listed because 2 of those were at the same category here, same height here, and this was obviously the lowest of them all. And then I want you to just answer this in reflection. Do you see a pattern in your group? And what do you think your learning style tells you about a career that you might be interested in? Now here's where maybe you've been thinking about, well, what can I do when I get older? What can I do as a vocation or a calling in life? What's my purpose? And maybe here, based on what you've learned about yourself in form of the natural or the multiple intelligences, you might say, hey, this looks like I might be good at this career. Okay, those are just some reflection questions I'd like you to answer 1, 2, 3, and 4 as a wrap up to today's activity. Taking that scientific data, turning it into a bar graph, and learning a little bit about yourself. Hope you enjoy.